There's a sentence written by an 8th century monk that I return to every time when I landed in Rome. Rome will exist as long as the Colosseum does. When the Colosseum falls, so will Rome. When Rome falls, so will the world. He wrote this at the moment when the Roman Empire was still arguably the organizing principle of the known world. He wrote it as a statement of permanence, and the extraordinary thing, the thing that stopped me on the Via Sacra every single time, is that 2,000 years later, the Colosseum still stands, and the sentence still feels true. Welcome to Zenith Massif. Think of us a concierge of new perspective. The stories and adventure that hide in plain sight. The investment of an unacquired taste. I'm your host, Mr. Lu, and today we walk in Rome. Before we go anywhere, I want to give you a word, because if you've been to Rome, you will know that beautiful doesn't quite cover it. Beautiful is the right word for a Monet water lily, or a perfectly composed room in Kyoto Inn, or a well-tailored jacket. Rome is something else. The word is sublime. In aesthetic theory, Kant, Bouquet, the whole tradition, the sublime describes an encounter with something so vast, so powerful, so far beyond ordinary scale, that it exceeds your capacity to absorb it fully. There's awe in it, there's a slight edge of fear, and paradoxically, there's also deep reward. Kant called it a negative pleasure, the discomfort of being overwhelmed combined with the exhilaration of having survived the encounter intact. Beauty is a perfect rose, sublime is standing at the edge of a stormy ocean at night, or looking up a mountain face that disappears into clouds. You can admire a rose from a comfortable distance. The sublime reaches inside you without asking permission. Rome fits sublime perfectly. Rome doesn't negotiate, and our job as visitors is to find a way to exist within that. I've been thinking about why that is, and I think it comes down to this. Rome is the only city where three distinct civilizations, pagan antiquity, Christian theology, and humanism, each try to out-sublime the last. They stack their ambitions on top of each other, literally, in the same street, sometimes in the same building. What you get is a city where sheer density of accumulated intentions become its own overwhelming force. Now, let's take a walk. My ritual every time I arrive in Rome is to go to the Colosseum before anyone else, not at opening time, before that. I set an alarm for 6:15. I splash cold water on my face in whatever hotel I'm staying in, skip the breakfast entirely, and walk there in the early morning dark. The last time I did this was 2 years ago. I left the hotel at 60 Street so empty that it echoed my footsteps, and arrived at Colosseum. The light was that very specific Rome early morning light, thin, golden, arriving almost horizontally across the travertine. There were two pigeons on the upper arch and a municipal worker in an orange vest, about 100 meters away pushing a broom. I stood there for probably 20 minutes without moving. There's a production story I think about it in that moment. When Ridley Scott was preparing to shoot The Gladiator, the original one at 2000, his production designer Arthur Max spent months studying Roman architecture, specifically the Colosseum, before they decided to build their own version in Malta. The reason they built it rather than shooting on the location was practical. Modern Rome is layered over ancient Rome in ways that makes it nearly impossible to recreate antiquity on the actual site. But also, Ridley Scott wanted to control over the light. He wanted to be able to make the arena feel enormous in morning light and intimidate and brutal in afternoon shadow. I think about that tension a lot when I'm in Rome. The real thing is always stranger and more irregular, always less perfectly legible than the version we carry in our heads from cinema and art. The real Colosseum is missing 2/3 of its outer wall, stripped for buildings materials in the medieval period. It looks, if you come at it from certain angles, almost skeletal. And that skeletal quality is, I will argue, more sublime than the complete version would be. It shows you the time's actual work. It shows you that even this was not new. What most people don't know about the Colosseum, and I find this extraordinary, is that its history extends so far beyond as to make the gladiator era almost a prologue. The arena was flooded with water for mock naval battles. Aquatic infrastructure, aqueducts, and tunnels designed to flood the floor to a shallow depth allow small ships to reenact famous Roman sea victory when Emperor Domitian added the ungrounded mechanism, an extraordinary subterranean network of tunnels. But for a period, the largest entertainment venue in the ancient world was also occasionally a harbor. The Colosseum, around 5 BC, became, of all things, a botanical garden. Centuries of abandonment allowed seeds to blow in and take roots in the arena floor and across the stone terrace. In the 19th century, botanists has cataloged over 400 distinct species of plant growing inside the structure. Many of them theorize that have arrived via animal feed and dawned from the animals kept there during the spectacle years. The wild garden grows inside civilization's most famous monument to controlled violence. In the 6th and 7th century, a small chapel was consecrated inside the Colosseum, Santa Maria della Pieta, honoring Christian martyrs believed to have been killed there during Roman persecution. Later in the 17th century, the architect Carlo Fontana proposed seriously with full architecture drawings a massive Baroque church to converting the pagan monument into a Christian one. The proposal was never executed. The outer walls were deemed too structurally important to modify. The Colosseum remains uniquely a monument to Rome's pagan era and survived into the Christian and secular world as itself, unco-opted. I find that remarkable. Every other major Roman building was eventually claimed by the church. The Colosseum simply outlasts everyone who tried to repurpose it. And here's what underpins all of it. What makes the Colosseum and the entire city physically possible? The Roman concrete. The Roman invention of opus cementism, their version of hydraulic concrete, is one of the most consequential material stories in human history. They didn't invent the concept of binding aggregated with cementous paste. What they perfected was specific chemistry. Pozzolana, a volcanic ash from the region near Naples combined with lime and seawater. The chemical reaction between volcanic ash and lime and salt water produced a material that counterintuitively becomes stronger over centuries of concrete with water. Modern researchers analyzing Roman harbor structure submerged in the Mediterranean for 2,000 years have found that the concrete is denser and more structurally coherent than when it was poured. It grows harder with age. The practical consequence was architectural freedom of a kind that ancient world had never seen before. Stone masonry requires highly skilled labor for every individual cut block. Concrete can pour by a relatively unskilled workforce into any mold, any shape. The arch, the vault, the dome, architectural forms that define Rome to this day become possible at scale because of concrete. And with architectural freedom came ideological confidence. Rome built this no one had built before because Rome believed it could. The confidence and the technology were in one system. From Colosseum, my walk takes me northwest through the Rome Forum, which I will address only in passing today because it deserves its own episode, and eventually to Pantheon. If Colosseum is Rome's declaration of power, the Pantheon is Rome's declaration of intelligence, a gift for all gods. It was built first around 25 BC by Marcus Agrippa, the close advisor and general of Emperor Augustus, to commemorate a naval victory, the Battle of Actium, which ended the Republic and began the Imperial era. The version stand today was rebuilt by Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century CE, and the inscription on the portico still reads M. Agrippa in Hadrian's deliberate act of historical modesty. a Scythian emperor crediting a man a century dead. The building's signature is the oculus, the 9-meter circular opening at the top of the dome, open to the sky, no glass, a perfect hole at the apex of a perfect hemisphere. The interior of the dome forms an exact sphere. In winter, the beam of light emits through the oculus traces the upper reach of the dome. In summer, it descends to the lower wall and the floor. At the equinox, March and September, the beams strike precisely at the junction between the roof and the northern entrance hall, creating a moment of exact alignment twice a year. On April 21st, the traditional founding day of Rome, the beam at midday align with the frames and arriving visitor in pure light, a ceremonial effect that reads 2,000 years later as deliberate and specific. The building is calculating the years in real time. I spend time observing what people do when they walk inside. There's a near universal response. They will stop, they look up, then they walk very slowly toward the center. Some people stand directly under the oculus, the spot where rain falls when it rains, the spot where the light is almost direct on a clear morning, and they just stand there. Children do it, elderly tourists do it, people who arrive talking loudly to each other will go silent. The building does something to the mammal brain that bypasses whatever culture or intellectual armor you have arrived with. The Pantheon survived because it converted to a Christian church around 600 CE. The Emperor Phoca gifted to Pope Boniface IV, who consecrated as a basilica dedicated to Virgin Mary and the Christian martyrs. This saved it from the fate of most Roman structure, being stripped for building materials. The Catholic Church preserved Rome's most perfect building by giving it a new identity while keeping its walls intact. The pagan roots were never fully suppressed. They were still visible in the architectural logic, in the dedication to all gods inscribed in the building's geometry itself. I want to talk about Rome and cinema for a minute. William Wyler shot Roman holidays on location in 1953, which was a revolution at the time. Hollywood had been building Rome on backlog of decades. Wyler wanted the actual Piazza di Spagna, the actual Trevi fountain, the actual street. And what that decision gave the film was something you can't manufacture. The sense of lightness and historical weight coexisting in the same frame. There's a scene near the Colosseum where Hepburn rides a Vespa through traffic, and the Colosseum just appears in the background, not as a dramatic focal point, as a background architecture. The way it is for Romans themselves, it is in the frame the way a building at the end of your block is in the frame of your commune. The ease of it is the whole point. I have thought about that scene every time I talk to Romans about their city. There's a quality in long-term Roman residents. I have had enough of these conversations at dinners, in hotel lobbies, at gallery openings that I can only describe as a specific kind of confident groundedness. They live inside the longest continuous narrative in Western civilization. Their metro gets interrupted constantly for archaeological discoveries. They lay fibrous cable and find a mosaic floor from ancient times. They dig a parking garage and hit an aqueduct. History isn't distant for Romans. It's literally underfoot, and after enough generations of that, it stopped being remarkable. It just becomes the place where you live. I have strong opinion about the pasta in Rome, and I suspect you do too. Roman pasta is not about variety. It's about precision applied to almost nothing. Cacio e pepe, carbonara, griccia. These dishes share a logic. Minimal ingredients, maximal technique. Enormous consequences for error. There's no hiding behind complexity. Cacio e pepe is 4 ingredients. Water, pasta, pecorino romano, and black pepper. The entire game is an emulsifying the starchy pasta water with cheese and pepper into a sauce that coats the pasta in a silky, continuously film. Not clumped, not wet, not dry. The window between right and wrong is narrow. A Roman grandma will look at your plate and know within 30 seconds what you did wrong. Carbonara has one absolute rule: no cream. The creaminess comes entirely from egg yolk, guanciale, cured pork cheek, not pancetta, not bacon, and pasta water. That's it. Restaurants outside Rome that put cream in carbonara are making a different dish. A nice dish maybe, but not carbonara. Romans feel about this the way a sommelier feels about calling Prosecco champagne. The word means something specific. The pork is guanciale. The tomatoes are San Marzano. The cheese is Pecorino Romano, not Parmesan. This isn't a preference. The dish has registered traditional status in Italy. The ingredients are legally specified. Roman pasta is serious. It is also, at right table, at right hour, one of the most purely satisfying things you can eat in the world. Now let's talk about Rome's gelato. Gelato is not ice cream, and the difference are actually worth understanding. Started with fat and air. American ice cream has to contain at least 10% butterfat by federal law. Premium brands are running 14-17%. And when you churn ice cream, you are incorporating air, a lot of air, somewhat 50% of volume of a standard commercial ice cream. It's just air. You are literally eating half air. Gelato is 6 to 8% fat, churning slower so less air gets in. Maybe 20 to 30%. That's it. Which means what you are eating is denser, smoother, and flavor hits completely different. There's nothing diluting it. Then there's temperature. Gelato is served warmer than ice cream, about -11 Celsius versus -15. 4 degrees doesn't sound like much, but it means the texture is softer, more yielding, and it releases flavor compounds onto your palate faster. This is why a good pistachio gelato tastes more like a pistachio than any pistachio ice cream you've ever had. It is not that there's more pistachio in it. It is that the temperature and texture are actually delivering the flavor to your nose and mouth the way it's supposed to arrive. Freshness is the third thing. A real gelateria makes its product every day, sometimes multiple times a day. What's in the case at noon was made that morning, and because gelato degrades fast, locals in Rome genuinely know the difference between a shop using fresh ingredient and the one using industrial paste out of a bucket. The visual cue, and this will change how you travel, is a container. Good gelato is stored in covered metal container, sitting low, no dramatic swirl, no mounting. If you walk past gelateria with tall, brightly colored peak of gelato piled up in open display cases, that's the commercial version. It's designed to get photographed, and it tastes probably worse. Last thing to mention about gelato is the regional identity. Gelato in Rome is not the gelato in Florence, it's not gelato in Sicily. The Roman style is more assertive, less sweet. Lean hard into nuts, hazelnuts, pistachio, walnuts, and a serious gelaterie will tell you exactly where their pistachio are from. Same recipe, completely different gelato. They will tell you unprompted because it matters to them. I don't recommend specific shops. I think the hunt is an experience, but here's what you are looking for. Cover container, a short menu on a chalkboard, and a line of locals at noon. For those listening who prefer to engage with city at an elevated level, and I know a number of you do, let me talk about the current state of Rome's luxury hospitality because it has changed significantly in the past 5 years. La Pergola deserves its 3 Michelin star. I want to say that clearly because in some circles there's a reflexive skepticism about hotel restaurant. The idea that a restaurant attached to a hotel is somehow operating in a protected commercial environment that doesn't require the same level of achievement as a freestanding table. La Pergola at the top of Rome Cavalieri, the Waldorf Astoria property on the hill above the Vatican, does not benefit from that critique. Chef Heinzberg has built one of the most coherent and serious Italian fine dining experience in Rome. The view from the terrace at night, the entire city laid out below you in that amber Roman glow. The dome of St. Peter's Basilica, visible to the southwest, is part of the experience. They understand this, and they have calibrated the pacing of the evening to give you time in it. The dessert presentation at the end of the meal, a kind of treasure box of small confessions, is the right gesture, ending a serious meal with something that acknowledges the theatrical. The Bulgari Roma opened after 4 years renovation process, and I want to describe what they have done. The building, a plaza on the Via Cantante, has been redesigned in what they're calling a rationalist interpretation, a translation of classical Roman architectural language, columns, pediments, the hierarchy of orders, into clean geometry surfaces. It is a statement about how you engage with history, acknowledging the weight of Rome precedent without being crushed by it. For a city as historical dense as Rome, this is actually a design problem for real difficulties. The easy routes are pastiche, either uncritical classical revival, which produces a sin-par quality, or aggressive modernism that refuses to acknowledge context. The Bulgari threads this with real precision. The second one is the bar phare. It's been conceived, as I understand it, around the idea of encounter rather than menu. A temporary installation model, meaning the experience changes on schedule rather than running a static offering. The interior concept is described as a meeting of Rome ruin, Baroque dreams, and cinematic set, which sounds frankly like a brief of Rome itself. I haven't experienced it in its complete form yet, but the concept ambition is bright and attractive. And the location near the Piazza della Minerva, a block from the Pantheon, means the neighborhood context is doing significant work. The Spanish Steps, the 135 steps Baroque staircase connecting the Piazza di Spagna to the church at the top, function primarily as a social infrastructure. There were too wide to be purely practical, too visible to be private, and designed to be occupied. The Baroque architect understood something that contemporary urban designers have mostly forgotten, that the best public space are those give people a reason to be still in them. The steps are a place to sit. That's their core function. Sit and watch the city happens around you. I have a specific memory of the Spanish Steps from a trip I took years ago, when I was traveling with a group of friends for what we'd call a high school reunion, but was really just an excuse to spend a week in Rome together. We were 8 people. We would budget for a week, approximately 800 euros each, which in Rome at the time felt just about right and turned out to be enough if you were disciplined about the gelato. We spent an afternoon on the steps, arriving there about 4 in the afternoon on Wednesday, when the light was still long and the stone was warm from the day's sun. The things about Spanish Steps is that they make you part of the view. You are not watching Rome, you are in it. The Steps is an amphitheater with the piazza as a stage and the crowded on the steps as both audience and actors. Everyone is looking at everyone else, and everyone is being looked at. This is a very specific Roman social mechanism, refined over a century of culture that has always treated public space as a form of theater. What if I told you the monk who wrote that sentence about the Colosseum, he had never seen Rome? He wrote about it from reports, from letters, from accumulated testimony of pilgrims and travelers. He wrote about the Colosseum as a symbol rather than a building. And he was right, in a way that transcends whatever specific meaning he intended. The Colosseum endures, the Rome endures, not because of structural integrity alone, though Roman concrete has helped, but because Roman crystallized something about human ambition, human skill, and human folly that retained its relevance across every subsequent civilization. I am someone who spent a significant portion of my professional life thinking about what endures, in the capital markets, in architecture, in fashion collections, in the structures we build to hold and transmit value across time. Rome is the single best education I know in that subject. Every street teaches the same lesson in a different material. Things built to last, built with the best available technology and the most serious available intention, built to represent something beyond their immediate function. Those things do, in fact, last for a lifetime and beyond. The Pantheon still reads the year in real time. The Colosseum still stands as an organizing symbol of an entire civilization, and the concrete is still getting stronger. The monk's sentence was a wager, placed 1400 years ago, on the durability of human achievement in its most ambitious form. So far, it's paying. Come to Rome, walk slowly, eat the pasta, stand it up if you have to. Stand under the oculus until the light moves. And in the morning, before anyone else is awake, go to the Colosseum and let it work on you. Have you experienced something sublime before? What's your favorite flavor of gelato? Drop us a note, leave a comment, or email us. We would love to know. Every week, we will dedicate an episode to respond to your question and your stories. Next episode, we are going to take a look at two powerful fashion brands produced by Italy. See you next time.